It's a clock. But this one is,
Right.
Recording in progress.
Mute that guy. Oh. There's your silence. Being too silent. Now I get the copier to be talking about it. All right, I think we are on. Good evening. It is 7:01 and Thursday, March 2nd. I'm calling the Lunenburg Finance Committee to order. In accordance with the requirements of open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link attached on the agenda that is listed on the town website. Or from a telephone, please dial toll-free 888-475-4499, entering webinar ID 870-8172-9841 and passcode 289141. This agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions, and as we have Mr. Simeone remotely, it will be a roll call vote. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements from the committee? All right, I just have one. Today is the last day that the SNAP emergency allotments were given out to anyone that's actually on the SNAP program. They were put in place during COVID as an attempt to get more money into people's hands, and on average, it was about $177 more per month. As a result of this, 590 households in Lunenburg alone are going to be losing those benefits. So there is a large number of our community that is going to be taking a substantial hit to their monthly grocery ability. In total, it's $104,000 loss for the residents per month. So, as an attempt to do a plug at the same time, there is the Lunenburg Food Pantry, which runs from the Lions Club. They are relatively stocked and have actually teamed up with the Worcester County Food Bank now to get a lot more food in there, but I'm sure they could certainly use more donations if anyone's able to. If anyone of the 590 households or anyone else on the program is in need, just reach out to lunfoodpantry@gmail.com. Is there any, oh, I don't even have it on here. Public comment. Any public comment from the committee? No. Any public comment from the public? Make sure there's nobody online. All right, seeing none. We are moving straight into new business. Do we have the IT department ready to go?
Stand.
Sure.
So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Casey Chisholm. I am the IT director for the town, contracted through Suzer IT. Suzer IT is a company that offers IT solutions for K-12 education and municipalities. Along with myself, the Lunenburg Technology Department consists of Dan Nadoreski, who is the help desk and network administrator, Kara McCarthy, who is new, starting today, which we're really excited about. She's the IT administrative assistant. And then Suzer IT Shared Services. The shared services are basically services that the town utilizes when they're needed. So we don't always need a project manager on hand, but when we do a network upgrade or email migration like we did last year, that's when we need a project manager. Similar with the network and security team, when we have network incidents or network upgrades, we utilize that team to bring in as extra hands. So before we dive into the FY24 budget, I did want to just talk about some of the progress that the town has made.
I have the slides up. If you want me to, I can certainly progress through them. Just
Yes.
okay. Just let me know when to change, and I'll have
Yes,
it.
go ahead. You
Okay.
can, I think.
Nope.
Two ahead now. I think we already did the.
Okay.
Yep,
Oh,
that was the
that was the intro.
intro, and
we
now
go.
we're on.
Perfect.
So just in regards to the town's progress, again, in terms of modernizing with technology, the network upgrade was a big one. It previously all the buildings were on their own network, which was really challenging to monitor and security concerns. So that is now all on one ubiquitous unified system, which is a lot easier to monitor and provides a seamless experience on the back end and for the town users. It's also ensured that the town is meeting requirements set forth by Maya. The Office 365 migration, which was a big migration from Edition Networks over to Office 365, improved security through multi-factor authentication, which again meets the requirements that Maya puts forth. Then we have the asset replacement cycle, which now the town is underway with, which means every year devices are getting replaced, so out of date or aging devices are no longer being left on the network, which could cause security concerns if old Windows 7 devices are still there. It also just ensures that staff are on usable devices to efficiently do their job. Then we have the Munis migration, which is in progress. That should be completed by September of 2022. And that is a necessary move that Tyler Technologies, who hosts the Munis software, the town accounting software, is requiring, but we're also excited to make that move because it's going to be a much better system that we're going to be moved on to. It's also helped us eliminate out-of-date servers that were consistently causing disruptions to the day. And then the updated website, which again is also in progress. And that's just going to improve efficiencies on the back end for the town employees who are managing the program, and will in turn allow for efficiencies for the townsfolk. So that's just some of the town's progress. Onto the next slide for the next year's initiatives. Again, I mentioned Cara McCarthy is new onto the team as the technical support position. Previously, department heads and Heather were the ones managing the website updates. So that's going to be pulling that responsibility off of those employees so they can focus on their roles, and someone else will be, Cara will be responsible for Kara. I think it's Kara. I did. It's Kara. Will be responsible for making sure the website gets updated for department heads, committees and boards, other public notices, and also responsible for the IT invoices.
Is she a SUSE employee or a town
She is
employee?
not. So Dan and Kara are both town employees, and then myself and the SUSE Shared Services are SUSE. So again, she started today, and we're excited to have her on the team and moving forward. Next, we have just some hardware maintenance, the phone upgrade that was planned to be part of FY23, but we were not able to get to that in our initiatives for this existing fiscal year just because other things took precedence, such as the Munis upgrade that was taking a lot of time and labor and attention. So that's on the books for FY24. The current server, again, needs to be upgraded. It is end of life, so we want to get that replaced before we have an emergency failure. The computer upgrades on the replacement cycle that I had previously talked about. Last year it was at a number of 20,000. We have increased it to 30 to account for just an increased number of devices that need to be replaced sooner rather than later. That increase is also accounting for inflation of costs, which everything is going up, and technology is not immune to that. And then the library camera upgrade. Right now, the library is on 2 separate systems, one of which is very outdated and poses a security concern, as it is on an old Windows 7 device. So it also just is really hard to manage from a technical standpoint, and for the director to manage 2 separate systems. Next, we have internet access. So last year, we made the move to fiber for the public safety building, which was a great increase of efficiencies for them, and we want to continue that initiative for other town buildings. The priority being town hall, and then if we can get to it, the Ritter and DPW. It's going to increase reliability and uptime, and it's also going to ensure that when there are incidents, the internet service provider offers a much faster response time when it's fiber as opposed to copper. Software maintenance, that got increased, I believe, 2% across the board for software maintenance. Again, accounting for inflation on software that is just contractually going up. And then the last piece here, we have email cloud hosting. So we completed the email migration of the boards and committees. That's that last piece, is the boards and committees got added into Office 365, and that increased that cost by $7,000 or $7,500 to the total email and data storage. And those are the main initiatives we're looking at for the next fiscal year, and looking forward to putting into place to help continue modernizing the town in a technological view. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Questions?
Open up to questions.
I can start with a couple. So first of all, I thought your migration went really well. I said that to you before the meeting, but I was going through one at work and here at the same time, and I guess we're not a Fortune 500 company here, but it did go really well in my opinion.
I'm glad to hear that it was. Yeah, I think we tried to make it as seamless as possible.
Yep, and I understand there was phasing, and that's natural, but I do like the new platform. A couple questions, though, and I asked this a little bit last week. The library camera upgrade, do we have other cameras in town, and is this now the same camera? Like, does police have cameras? And who has access to these cameras?
So the library upgrade right now.
I want to know where they all are.
No, just get word of the morning.
There's no ubiquitous system or unified system across the town for camera systems. This would be a new system proposed going into the library. The only people who would have access to it would be the library director, the IT department, and the management side of things. And then if police needed access, they would have access to it as needed. But right now, there's no ubiquitous system across the town. This would be a new system that's getting put into place that no other building currently has.
Okay, but like schools has cameras probably?
Schools have cameras,
Police probably
yes.
have cameras.
Police have cameras. That's a different subject, I think.
I don't mean like the body cams, but I do
Yes,
mean like,
there are building cameras in
Yep.
public safety. There's a few on the fire side, and the majority of them are on the police side.
is the goal from a town perspective and hopefully from school in town to move to a common platform?
So that's a great question. I think ideally, yes, that would be a great idea. The town is on, or the school is on a much more robust system than I think the library needs, so I don't think it would make sense to bring in that robust and pricey solution into the library for what they're needing. It can definitely be a discussion point and see what that looks like.
Okay.
And then the police department, we are looking at actually redoing their solution right now, and getting a new system in there, whether that be with the existing vendor or otherwise. But to answer your question, I don't have a straightforward answer of would it be unifying across the town and the school. Right now, that is not how it is. We can go down that route, but the school's camera system, again, is very robust, and I don't know if it would be too much for the town side.
Okay. So a question from the audience that kind of came up, and I don't know if this is you or PAC or you and PAC, but so Zoom, Facebook, Channel 8, YouTube, it's a great service for the town, and I think it encourages participation, whether it's passive or active participation in meetings. But, you know, even like Tuesday meeting with the select board, that just kept going in and out of coverage across the board. Are there initiatives in place to kind of update that? Because I do think a lot of people in town are utilizing that service.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's you or PAC or both.
It's definitely, it's going to be a collaboration between the two departments. There are pieces that are specifically PAC that for their equipment. And then there's pieces in terms of like the network and making sure the network is stable, which at this point it is. I know there was some issues connecting back from the town and the high school, and that is being worked on. We did an upgrade in the high school over break, so that would fix any issues with them streaming back to the town hall for their meetings. But there is going to be some collaboration between PAC and the IT department in regards to getting some new equipment and making sure that that's a more seamless process.
So it seemed like on Tuesday, it was a remote meeting that was broadcast. So whatever use case that becomes, and,
Okay.
that may be one you need to,
Was that in this building? It was,
it was fully remote.
Now to reboot the server.
okay.
Probably have to do with Castle.
Yeah, the server that PAC uses is a proprietary server with a vendor that they have a relationship with. So that would be probably a really good question for PAC. I don't have too much details on their equipment, but I do know there's a Castus server that is in this building that I don't know the life cycle or the status of that, so I don't want to comment too much on that. That would be a good follow-up question for PAC. But I do know that the server is in here, and if there are issues with it and it does need to be rebooted, they do have to come back over here to do so.
Okay. On the computers, do we lease computers or buy computers? And have we done the trade study on which one's a better option?
We buy computers. Computers are similar to cars in the sense that as soon as you leave the lot, they start to depreciate. So leasing in terms of, it's not something that's widely done in municipal environments.
Okay.
Typically, we see a life cycle of 3 to 5 years on a computer. That's right now about $1,500 a piece, which has, yes, pretty drastically increased in the past 2 years. 2 years ago, it was around $1,100, and now they're about $1,500 per computer. But with how frequently they're used and how, the high users is, they hit more wear and tear than other devices. So we typically like to purchase outright and have them part of that replacement cycle. But I do not know if there's been we have not done a use case in terms of leasing versus purchasing outright. But with the other municipal towns that we work with, we don't see a lease solution put into place.
Because I know in the private sector, mostly they're leased. And maybe that's only to not have to have a ID department on staff or something like that. But I just didn't know if there was a cost benefit for that.
Definitely something I can look into and do some research on, for sure.
I think that's all. Thank you.
Piggybacking off of that, do you know how many machines we currently have that are still running Windows 7 in town?
To my knowledge, we have two running Windows 7.
Yes.
Yes.
Two.
One in the library, and I believe there's one in the town building somewhere. I just don't recall which one. The majority of the devices are Windows 10. There's a handful that are up to Windows 11 right now.
Okay.
But we'll go through and do the Windows 11 upgrade in phases as we're ready to do so.
Okay. I assume there's machines that are not going to be capable of going
Yes.
up there to 11 as well, so that's part of the 30,000 as well?
Yep.
Okay. What's the standard policy for after that 3 to 5 years, after the computers are turned back in? What ends up happening with them?
There's a couple options. Sometimes they're just end of life and there's no really point, and they'll get inventoried. They're already inventoried, but they'll get inventoried and they'll get put into an e-waste system, and we have a company that comes and picks up any e-waste for free on the town. And if it goes that route of this just can't be reused, it goes into the e-waste pile. If it can be reused, it's either going to be reused for temporary purposes or spare devices, because we always, there's going to be failures no matter what. There's also opportunity to sell them back through certain vendors. We haven't gone that route too much in this town, just because we're just kind of started that replacement cycle, and a lot of the devices that we do have in the town are older, and we wouldn't really get much benefit from that source.
Okay. The technical support position, Kara or Kara? Kara, okay. How many hours a week is she likely to be putting in?
She is a part-time position.
Up to 19.
19? Okay. And then do we think that that's sufficient to fully upgrade the website? Obviously, maintaining it can be done with 19 hours, but.
Yes. I believe, yes, I believe so.
Okay.
A lot of the migration is going to be, done by the website company, and we're here to just basically say, yes, we want this, or no, we want that. There is gonna be some hands-on work that we need to do, but yes, that should be a sufficient amount of time.
Okay. And since you started today, this is probably more a question for you or Ms. Brochu, but how are we covering her salary before FY '24 hits? Or is
That
it-
was a position that was budgeted for fiscal.
It was already budgeted, okay, we just didn't get anyone hired until now? Okay.
It's very hard to fill the position.
So do we have overage then for that, since we didn't have to spend whatever was allotted at the beginning of FY '23?
We'll probably be surplus at that point.
Okay, okay. Let's see, the other question I had was, do we have a number for the software maintenance at all? Or is it too impossible to kind of pick?
I'm sure if we got all of our current contracts and pricing for next fiscal year, we could make that happen.
Do we have just a general order of magnitude?
Yeah.
Thousands, 10,000s,
Maybe.
hundreds of thousands?
I can add it up really quickly if you'd like.
Just out of curiosity, just so we have a kind of a more full picture as to what the increases overall are.
So Munis, again, the town accounting software, we did see I think a $4,000 increase for them. So that contract is up to 57 annually.
Okay.
That's going to be one of the biggest ones. And then the next one is going to be the OpenGov online permitting. And that is a great resource for the townsfolk, and that's just so people can do their online permitting, and that's up to 34 annually.
There's a fee associated with that though as well, right?
Yes, there's a technology fee that gets deposited into the revolving fund.
It
Okay.
helps offset that.
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking maybe 10,000, 15,000 or something like that. It's not gonna be something
No,
that we're
the
gonna look at and
majority
see,
of,
oh,
I
it's
mean, the
50,000.
software, if we're including email hosting in that software line, the majority of that increase is going to be the additional email licenses for Office 365. That's $7,000
That
increase.
reminds me, how are we doing on email licenses? Because I know we had a member that was stuck without an email for 2 months, a month.
Maybe upwards of a month.
I
But that
think
was
you're-
because of licensing.
Yes.
He has one now, but.
Yes, we're set to where we need to be. We have a much smoother system in place now, and we need to add additional licenses. But in terms of where the town's current employees are, unless we're going to be adding an additional 10 new members onto the staff, we're in a good place for licensing. We shouldn't need to purchase any additional.
Okay, so we have a limit of 10, we have a ceiling of 10 right now that we can add on at this point before we have another issue potentially that we have to,
I think we have a ceiling of 6.
6?
I think I was over.
Okay. The 3 that are up that are there for the select board meeting on this coming Tuesday, are those going to be on top, part of that, is that going to be half of our email addresses right there potentially, or? Basically, how
We would reuse
smoothly can we-
licenses.
Okay.
So what we would essentially be able to do is just any user, and this is the case for any employee as well, if they leave the town or are no longer on a board, that license just gets taken from that account and applied to the person replacing them.
Okay.
So we don't have to.
So unless
purchase
it's a new,
Yes, unless it's
true
a new,
position.
entirely new position,
Okay.
then we have enough licenses for the town.
Do we currently have, for the number of vacancies we have on town boards, committees, and commissions, do we have enough email addresses if by some miracle we have all of them filled?
We
come this
should,
May?
because when we did the original migration, Heather and I did account for the vacant
Okay.
positions.
Okay.
When we made that purchase.
Okay, perfect. Okay, the last question I have was just on the internet access upgrades to ideally Town Hall, Ritter, and DPW. That $17,000, is that the estimated increase for all 3 buildings or just for the Town Hall?
All 3 buildings.
Okay.
And that would be it breaks down to about $650 a month per building.
Okay. That's the continued cost going forward? Okay. Okay, so that's not the actual infrastructure addition as well, or anything, that's not putting anything in, that's just the monthly maintenance cost?
Exactly.
at that point.
There already is fiber in this building, so Comcast shouldn't have to do too much in terms of installation. I'm still waiting on a number for that.
Okay.
But there's already fiber run from a previous, it's not Comcast fiber, but they should still be able to piggyback off of.
Got it, okay, perfect. All right, any other questions anyone has?
Yeah, I have some
Go
few
for it.
questions. Hi, Ms. Chisholm, thanks for coming to our committee. Maybe a couple observations and then just a question. So the total budget, at least from the preliminary budget for the town, is up about 2.5%, at least from the spreadsheet that I have. It's not the most recent changes. And the technology budget's up about 27%. So it's obviously a huge kind of outsized investment, which is not that surprising because it's technology, and I'd be surprised if many organizations have their technology budgets going up, slower than the rest of their budget. But one thing I don't have a good view of is can you just give me like maybe a minute or two on all the services you provide at a high level and to which areas you provide? I assume, it's not the school IT, right? Do you do anything for the schools?
Me personally, yes, I do work with the schools as well, but they have their own budget for our services.
That's right. So it's not in this budget that we're talking about tonight?
No, they're two separate contracts, two separate budgets.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, and you do both?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that. Could you just give me maybe a quick rundown of like the major services you're providing to the town and maybe to the school committee too? Or to
Like
the
in terms of
schools,
like the
so-
SUSER services?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically we provide outside of like the IT director role and the direction, the budgeting, it really comes down to those shared services that are being utilized as the town, right? So we are able to pull other resources into the town as needed. Again, when we have network upgrades or network issues. So that's in terms of being proactive and reactive when things happen and making sure that we're always ahead of the game when it comes to upgrading our technology. In terms of my position, I'm part of SUSER IT. I'm offering like the typical IT director role in terms of making sure things are getting upgraded on time, the software is up to date, the team has
So I understand that part, so there's internet, there's email, those are the types of things I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the particular types of IT services you're providing?
me individually or me?
I'm the whole IT.
The whole
budget, I
IT
guess.
budget.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Sorry about
No,
that.
that's okay. So the whole IT budget. Yes, email, computer upgrades is going to be a big one. That replacement cycle is probably a huge piece of that budget and making sure that we are replacing our assets. The email is a big chunk of it. The internet services is going to be an increasing chunk if we can get to that fiber in all of the buildings. The other programs that are in here in terms of the software, so really it's going to be the software that is allowing the employees of the town to do their job more efficiently. So the Munis upgrade, or the town accounting software, right? So that's $57,000 annually. That is the whole accounting software for the town. That we need that to function as a infrastructure. Same with the online permitting. So that is allowing folks at home to do their online permitting and reach out virtually to do that work. It adds a level of ease and efficiency between the communication between the town employees and the townsfolk. So those software pieces is really just to make sure that the people who live in the town and the people who serve the town are able to communicate as best as possible and make sure that they can do their jobs efficiently. So the software piece and the computer replacement are going to be those two items that are and the emails that is going to be taking the majority of that budget outside of like the internet services, which is again going to be a big jump if we can get that to fiber.
Got it.
Does that answer your question a little bit better?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And
Sorry, I
so-
was misunderstanding you there for a minute.
And are you providing this for like the library and,
It covers all town buildings. The library is a little different just because they work with CW Mars, and they get some services from CW Mars through like most libraries. Yep.
got it? No, that's very helpful, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm not surprised that the budget's going up so much. But I mean, obviously, it's just something we gotta watch over the years, I think.
Yes. And I do think that we're getting to a place, obviously, with the asset replacement cycle, like hopefully we're not going to be increasing that, to 50,000 and 60,000. We're going to be set at a schedule, so that maintains it. So we're not hitting a break fix where all of a sudden we need to spend an astronomical amount of money to replace 50 devices across the town. So that's hopefully the point of that is to be proactive in these items.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thought of a couple other ones. How are we doing with supply chain issues at this point? I know my company we can't get a computer if we need, depending upon the machine that we need, we can't get it.
Much better.
Okay.
We ordered some devices 3 weeks ago, and they have already come in. So we're doing much better in terms of that. I know some network equipment is still taking a long time, but the town is where it needs to be with network equipment. So we shouldn't need to be purchasing any of that anytime soon. But the computers, in terms of desktops, laptops, those are all the devices we're ordering. The supply chain has been settled out for
Okay.
those.
And that includes, okay, the upgrade of the phone system as well. Do you foresee any issues with that?
The phones, the company we've worked with in the past to do phone upgrades in other municipalities, maybe a 2-month lead time. But
Okay.
nothing like it was during the midst of the worst of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And the last one is just over the last year that it's been 1 year, correct?
A little over.
Right, okay. Over the last year, is there anything that sort of you've kind of come across that other municipalities of our size are implementing that we're not, or anything that we're sort of missing or could you make use of if you had a wish list, basically?
No, I think we have, we're in a really good spot in Lunenburg and making sure that, and that we're updating where we need to update and making sure that we're staying modern with the other local municipal government. I think that the fiber, and again, at least definitely this building, ideally the other buildings as well, but that's going to be something that's going to be a huge benefit to the town that I think other municipalities are utilizing. But that's the main priority, I think, is making sure we get but more reliable internet
Right.
access into the town buildings.
Excellent, okay. Any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, one that just came
Go
to
ahead.
mind. What about training? Is the training adequate for, we went through a migration.
Yep.
Was there adequate training associated with it? And
So we're planning, and I've been discussing this with Heather, of doing another round of Office 365 training, and it'll just going to turn into an annual training, because I'm sure, as you know, technology changes all the time, and as Microsoft updates their software, we'll need to retrain and just give people kind of refreshers on what they can do and what they have features in that software. So that is going to be something that we'll be doing training on again, and then we'll just have an annual training on at least Office 365. And then we do offer like an annual security training in terms of phishing attempts and any potential hacking attempts that may come through the town in regards to that. So that's something that's offered annually as well.
is that extended to boards and commissions?
Yeah. Yep. It covers anyone who's has basically an employee or a town email, essentially, because we want to make sure that we're being proactive and making educating everybody on how to use the town emails and making sure they're using it securely, and how to address phishing attempts or hacking attempts when they do happen. So yes.
Makes me actually think of a question I think you asked last year about ransomware attacks and how well protected, I think you were concerned about
I think it was either Peter or I.
one of the two of you.
Yeah.
How well protected are we now that we have sort of gotten the system up and running against a town-wide ransomware attack or something?
I mean, a lot better, a lot more. I'm never going to say 100% because
Right.
that's just never going to happen, right? But much more protected with the new network infrastructure and the Office 365 platform. Again, then that comes down to user training and making sure people are, understanding of phishing emails and when to open and when not to open. But in terms of the infrastructure, we're much more protected.
Okay.
All right, I hate to ask this one, but do you also do the assessor's IT and backup of their files and stuff like that?
Any files that the assessor has is all in Office 365. Since that migration, they were migrated before the rest of the, not before, there was a few departments that were migrated previously. Now we're coming to the rest of the departments. So all those files are in Office 365, and then they have their assessor-specific programs that they have files saved in. That would be those two primary places. Did that answer your question?
I think so. So I know Michael Ray had mentioned that there were some files back from like 5 years ago that we didn't have access to. In the current system, would we now have access to those 5 years into the future?
So like now and in 5 years. So in 5 years, everything's in Office 365 now in the data storage. So they will stay there unless for some reason we decide to do another migration, which we don't plan on doing. So they will stay there, and then anyone who has access, so the assessors would have access, and then basically we have shared drives within there, and then whoever would need access to that, but you only get access if you're approved to have access to those drives. So that would stay within Office 365. In 5 years, it would still be there.
Even that Canva system, is it Canva? What's the system that they use? I forget the name of the
I
system.
have no idea.
For the mapping, I believe.
Oh,
Do you know
Access,
that-
Access GIS.
Access
Yeah,
GIS.
What is, oh, Vision, yeah,
GIS.
yeah.
Oh, and then they added Vision, okay.
That would be, I mean, I want to say yes, but it's also not something that, I'm not extremely familiar with it because
Okay,
I just
okay,
don't, I
that's fine.
don't manage it in that way. But any data that's in there, yes, it would stay in there unless it was purged, which
I
doesn't.
didn't know if it went into like some centralized database somewhere
Well,
else.
it's a
and then-
cloud-hosted
Right.
system, so anything that's in our system would be in the vendor's system, so they would always have backup, that
Okay.
they're backing up that data.
But it-
How are we looking with where we're at currently for, I know it's cloud storage, but we have to purchase a certain amount of cloud storage. Are we anywhere near that limit? Or are we growing at a rate where we may come close to that limit anytime soon?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And even if we were, we get plenty of notice from Office 365 before that happens, but we're not near our limit of storage.
Okay.
We've been working with towns that have been in Office 365 for 6 years, and they're nowhere near their storage limit.
Any other questions from anyone up here? Mr. Simeone, any questions at home?
No, I'm all set. You guys covered pretty well.
All right. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are 20 minutes early. I am fine starting 20 minutes early if you guys are. Unless you want us to sit here for 20 minutes. So I have all the documents you sent up as well, so just let me know, well, apparently I'm gonna print it right now. Just let me know whichever ones you'd like me to pull through and I can,
You have the presentation, correct?
I'm sorry?
You have the presentation?
I do, yep.
I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
Just, to go through the presentation.
Why does it want me to print everything?
He just puts dogs in all his presentations.
Makes
now.
everybody feel comfortable.
Everyone loves dogs.
Oh, gosh.
If they had police cats, we'd have police cats too.
I can't bring Hank here because everybody would pay attention to the dog and not to our
what budget?
presentation.
Is the fire chief gonna bring a Dalmatian in?
You'll have to talk to him about getting one.
All right, ready whenever you are.
I'm ready, thank you. Chief Gamble, Thank you for having me. I appreciate this, and again, it's an honor to present our budget again. This is my third presentation. First of all, I want to thank the town manager for her guidance and her help and assistance through ClearGov and to present a budget and get our budget ready. Thank Amanda. She's my administrative assistant. Without her, I wouldn't be sitting here right now presenting this. You might have like 3 pages and we'd be done in 5 minutes. So maybe that's a good thing, but the tremendous amount of work that went into this, with her help, I wouldn't have got this done. Next slide, please. So the next slide, this is just an overview of the police department. For the community members at home and for new members on the board that may not be aware of what our organizational structure is, we are currently 20 full-time officers with 1 vacancy. When you look at the organizational chart, everything in dark blue is what we currently have right now. Anything in light blue is a part of our 10-year plan. Anything in yellow is a current vacancy that we have. And the tan is a part of our 10-year plan that was put on pause for this year. All right. As a part of our organizational structure, we're broken up into an administrative bureau and an operations bureau, myself, the lieutenant, Amanda. A part-time person and our full-time desk clerk is part of the administration. Operations is patrol, investigations, SRO, anything that has to do with operations. Next slide, please. The dog is there. It's kind of a bittersweet announcement that we announced that Jerry is retiring. Jerry's 10 years old. He's been with the department for 9 years. He served with distinction for those 9 years. He is probably one of the most social canines that you'll ever meet. When he's not in work mode, he's great to be around. He loves jumping on me when I have my day 1 uniform and it's nice and clean and brand new and gets paw prints all over him. Just absolutely love it. We'll retire him at the end of this fiscal year. The plan is to have Sergeant Tossi keep him as his pet. We wish Jerry a long retirement and hopefully we continue to see him.
Will there be a retirement party?
We could, if you would like to attend, absolutely.
You might get some good turnout on that.
Absolutely, probably. Yeah, somebody can get in the bite suit for the one last time and we can work them a little bit. The next slide, this is just a little bit of an insight of what our officers are doing on a daily basis or a yearly basis. As you can see, we did a 3-year comparison this year, just to show the increase in the workload that we're seeing. 2022 was an extremely busy year for us. You're looking at 27,000 calls for service, which is a significant amount of number for a department our size. It's an approximate 4% increase from the year before. 2020 was a little unusual. It was a COVID year, so our numbers are down a little bit. Some of the concerns that we see here is, the rest numbers are up. And obviously that's something of a concern. We're trying to make the community safe and we want to make sure that we address those issues. One of the other concerns I see is the motor vehicle accidents and in particular the injuries that we're seeing with the accidents. With 74 injuries already, we're past what we did in 2021 for 2022. That's extremely concerning. Part of that, I think you're seeing a lot more people on the road. We're seeing growth in the community. We're seeing growth in our area in general, so I think you're seeing a lot of the effects from that. Next slide, please. And please, if there's any questions as we're going through this, please stop me at any time, and we'll answer them the best we can as we go through. The next slide is just showing motor vehicle activity, what we do for stops. It's relatively level from the year before. Again, if you look at the COVID year, we were kind of down that year. Again, what's concerning is domestic violence rates that we're seeing. We're seeing an increase in that. COVID year, people are isolated. They're in households together 24 hours a day. We've seen a really big spike that year. But again, we're starting to see a spike again. We're looking at 2022 with 77 domestic violence incidents with 22 arrests. And then we're looking at restraining orders where we've seen 36, which is an increase from the year before. And on top of that, the violations of the restraining orders.
Do we see that statewide? Is that like a statewide trend or?
That I would have to look, but an educated guess would say yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, I think crime and violence across the state and across the nation is on the increase. Without empirical data, I couldn't say for sure, but just, you folks see the news, you see what's going on around the country.
So Chief
Yes.
Gamble, quick question. So if we had 2019 on here, are we back to 2019 levels or we're above those? Because 2020 was just such an odd year.
Without pulling the data, I couldn't say for sure, but I think we're close, if not higher. We have an increase in staffing level also, so we're able to address more calls on a regular basis also. So that's part of the increase you're seeing too. Without pulling 2019, I really couldn't qualify that answer for you.
At what time did the traffic officer start?
I think we're into year and a half now.
Okay. Is it, since the number's actually gone down?
Well,
Do you think it's more just visibility?
it's just more visibility, yes and no. Part of it is discretion, part of it is, a lot of it is our traffic officers out there taking care of traffic.
Right.
One officer, where other patrol officers are taking care of other issues in town.
Okay.
Where we didn't have a traffic officer, everybody's doing it. So it changes us. Anything else? Okay. Next slide, please. All right, animal control is it's been relatively level for the last couple of years. The one thing that we didn't see increase is dog bites, whether they're reported now on a regular basis, because we're out of that COVID situation, people are calling. But we did have an incident that was pretty bad and was pretty vicious. And for that reason, you're gonna see something that we requested in our budget to take care of that issue. We don't want to ever see that again, and make sure that, the ACO is safe and her family's safe, from that point on. Another concern for us is the mental health part of this. Mental health calls are on the increase, and I've been saying this for the last 3 years since I became chief. We are aware of this when I was a lieutenant. We've taken steps to try to mitigate this and try to develop a co-response program. We're working with advocates in CHL here in our area to develop this co-response. It's just a long process to get this and have somebody embedded with our patrol officers who can respond to this. They're the experts in the area, in this area. It's not police officers that are experts in this. If we can get somebody that's a clinician to work with our police officers and be embedded and respond to these calls, they're better able to handle this. Our job should be to make sure that people are safe, right? When they go to these calls, make sure everybody's safe. Clinician handles it, take care of the issue, and get them the help that these people need. As you can see, we had a significant increase. We're at 69 mental health calls. And that doesn't include, this is straight mental health calls. This doesn't include alcohol abuse, drug abuse, or any other symptoms that we're seeing with this. So this is strictly what we're seeing through mental health issues. It's sad we're seeing, with the attempted suicides and the threat of suicides, whether they're successful or not, that 33 is pretty big. That's a big number for any community and for a community our size. So we're really trying to work to get to that co-response program. Next slide, please.
You don't have the, you mentioned drug or alcohol or something like that, but there's no line for that, is that?
Yeah.
Embedded in something else, or?
It's embedded in different aspects, and whether it's a drug arrest, it's embedded in the arrest stats itself, whether it's, we have a special study that we're working on with advocates in CHL that take the drug arrests that we have and combine it with the mental health to see if there is that type of situation. We're also involved in, it's called a CISM program, where somebody overdoses, that's a community member, we'll go out and do outreach. Knock on wood, significantly, we haven't had a lot of numbers with that.
Okay.
That's just, but again, to me, that's statistically, you just can't measure that yet, because some people don't, if they overdose, we may not know. The only reason we know is if they're into the system and we get notified, or if we're responding to that call. Anything else? Okay, next slide. Next slide is just about the firearms licensing and what we're seeing in town. Fairly level, nothing increasing too significantly there. It's just on par with what we're seeing every year. Sometimes we worry when there's new administration that gets voted in across the United States or the state. People panic and they want to come flying in to see us to get out. Thank God it hasn't happened. We just our capacity to take in those type of requests gets very limited. So it's been fairly level, and for the past few years, we're pretty decent with that.
Are these all requests, or are these all
All approved.
Okay.
These are all the ones that we've processed this
Have they
year.
effectively all been processed as they've come in, since
Yes.
it's such a
Yep.
small number?
Yep.
Just want to note, I see a typo there. That last column is 2022, not 2023. That's,
Oh, got it.
sorry about that.
Perfectionist.
Yes.
That's right.
Are those all new licensing?
It's new and renewals. Those are all of our licenses for each
Oh,
year.
how much they have to renew?
Every 5 years to 6 years, depending on your birthday, when it falls.
Thank you.
Okay. It's kind of odd, you just hear that.
Just the voice. Yep.
Just the voice out there. So FY '23, before we get into our '24 budget requests, FY '23, what we do as a staff, we meet monthly, and monthly we take a look at our expenditures, and we can reasonably determine where we're going to be at certain points of the year. We try to take a look at what our surpluses are, or where we're going to be short, maybe somewhere we need to reallocate money somewhere from another line. This year, we're pretty good. I can say that we are going to have a surplus in our salary lines. We've had an officer leave to the state police. Unfortunately, I have a hard time competing with that. And unfortunately, we lost a great officer. A lot of potential. He was a great officer by all accounts. It's just hard to compete with that. So with our vetting process and how long it takes us to get somebody in, we'll definitely see a surplus in that salary line. Another area where we're going to, I can guarantee you we're going to see a surplus is our lockup line. Basically, we have the ability to ship detainees out of town. They go down to the Worcester County Sheriff's Office Safe Keep program, takes them off our hands, costs us nothing. And they're the experts, let them take care of that. That's what we want. The only issue we run into is if the person's extremely intoxicated, suffering from some type of drug overdose or relapsing or whatever it may be, or female prisoners that we would have to keep with us. The other thing that we look at is, this is how we take and look at our next year's budget too. We evaluate where we are. We take into account for the CBA, we take into account for a 5-year look back and say, okay, where do we need the money? Where's our needs? Where are the state mandates? What is the collective bargaining agreements and where we're going to be in the future? One of the things that we had to do an internal transfer this year is that the CBA for the police union was settled after the fiscal year. So by then, we're already into the fiscal year, we're going to have to get a salary reserve transferred into that line. Any questions on that? Okay. Next slide.
I would just say that that's a really helpful slide.
Okay.
Really appreciate the work going in that slide. It's very helpful.
Kudos to him. I mean, those lines are perfectly aligned and the numbers are good.
The one thing I was thinking is just on percent expended, if it were level, would it be about 60%? Is that the?
Just about 60.
Okay,
Yeah,
Right
so this
where-
would have been through February 10th is when these numbers are from.
okay.
So we do this monthly. So obviously our percentages changed and this is 2 weeks into a month, but that's how we break everything down for the year. FY '24 budget. So again, our budget development is based on key elements of CBA, current and future needs, state mandates. We take a look at and evaluate where we are now, where we have been, where our surpluses have been. If there was any shortfalls where we had to do some money line transfers within our own budget. What we also do is take a look at our staffing plan, the 10-year staffing plan. This is where we would evaluate where we need to be and where we should be. We take the notion of what is a safe staffing level for our community. We take into account for the growth of our community, the growth of the surrounding community. Between Fitchburg and Leominster, we have 2 medium-sized cities that have city issues that bleed over into our community that we have to deal with. The calls for service and what are the nature of the calls, right? Are they significant calls that we're seeing on an increase? The increase of calls for violence, domestic violence calls, are we seeing an increase in that? And we try to make a determination that way. Just on a side note, approximately 3.5 officers per 1,000 is what is currently estimated around the state. For the town of Lunenburg, we're at 1.7 per 1,000. So realistically, right now, we should be at about 23 officers, 24. But again, we know where we're at and we know where we need to be. And also, we know what the budgetary issues are in town. And, you know, we have embraced this 10-year plan, and if it's on pause, it's on pause. We'll make do with what we have and we'll keep moving forward. Any questions on that? This is a general overview of our budget, and we get right into a detailed slide.
The 10-year plan, what year are we in on that?
5. We just completed 5.
I know last week or 2 weeks ago, we had someone talking about the master plan, and I guess the original master plan was that the town might actually shrink, and we're growing. Has that been taken into consideration?
It has. Like I said, I believe we're at residential population of 11.8. They're almost close to 12,000 residents. Based on that graphic alone, we should be at 25 officers right now. Whether it shrinks from there, we still would be in the anywhere from 20 to 25 officers. I don't see the community shrinking, just my personal opinion. We're at 11.8. I've been with the department since 2000, 23 years. When I started here, I think we're at 8,000 residents. And I haven't seen any shrinkage yet, so I think we continue to grow. We have development going on in town. We have proposals going on all over the place, so I would think that it'll continue to grow. And then we got to look at business areas also, that comes into play.
Is the new warehouse going to be a big burden for you, or is that?
I don't think so. Obviously, we're going to have more traffic down there, and we're going to have to allocate patrols down there, but I don't think it's a major impact. There's nobody there yet, so.
Okay.
Coming around that corner scares me.
Yeah, we've actually been working, this complaint has been going on for years and years and years. We've been working with Keating. They work with us on a regular basis, and they've been very supportive. It's just logistically, when you start taking corners out and start doing different things with roads, it's just much more than taking out a corner. And honestly, I learned that just by going out there and talking to Keating's, talking to Bill from DPW, and understanding, there's grades, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into it. But the new proposal where that land is being sold across the street, we're trying to work with whoever's going to buy that to try to mitigate that curve, because it is bad, it really is.
Even just taking down that ledge at that turn, you don't think, that would have to have helped?
It would, but it involves blasting, it involves a lot of different things, because it's all ledge. We don't know what is it going to affect the roadway, what is it going to affect that corner going down the reservoir. So again, it's just a matter of time of working with people to get that resolved.
Yeah.
And I agree, it's a bad corner, and we need to do something and just keep working towards that.
The $67,000 vehicle maintenance line, can you kind of go into a little more detail as to what that typically involves?
There's a slide further on down if you want to wait.
Fantastic.
And,
I can be patient.
Or I can do it now.
We can be patient.
Slide.
That's fine.
The next slide is our budget allocation. This is just a pie chart and the percentages of the breakdown. As you see, the largest portion of our budget is salaries. And that's typical of a police department, and this is what you're going to see, 81% is personnel salaries. Next slide.
Is this based off of town manager's numbers or your numbers for FY23 or for FY24?
Town manager. Approved.
Okay.
Temporary approved.
Okay, for 24, okay, got it.
Of course, these numbers can change. If she wants to give us
Sure.
more.
It's a pie. You can do whatever
That's
you want.
right. It's a pie chart. It can give it. The next slide, we've broke it down a little further for you so you could see what includes in our personnel salaries. Again, it's 81% of our total overall budget. When you break it down even further, you look at it and it's 72% is, again, salaries. And that's based on CBAs. and what we have, the incentives, the overtime, and the training that goes involved. Next slide, please. Personnel salaries. So we broke it down further for you, just to break it down line by line. This is our personnel groupings, and this is what their salary lines are. The stuff that you see highlighted in yellow, those are changes to the budget. First of all, that's based on the 10-year hiring plan that was put on pause. That 10-year hiring plan, when we hired the next person next January, was going to provide us to put a second detective in that position, half-year salary. That would increase the detective's line and then reduce the patrol line. Now that's put on pause, we have to readjust all those numbers and account for a full-year salary for a patrol officer. The 903 is the salary that we've calculated and we've come up with at that point. There is a little bit of a different number here than what the town manager presented because this number came to us late. We had an attrition last 2 weeks and it was in the state police. It really affected how this number works out also. Again, those are the adjustments. These lines are self-explanatory. They're line by line. These are covered by the CBA. They're incentive-based positions. Okay.
You mentioned the social workers, and which line do they cover?
That would be a whole separate new line.
It's a whole new,
Yeah,
okay.
it's a whole new position. We have an SRO. In the next couple slides down, we talk about, we were gonna get a second SRO, community outreach officer, which would have been that person that took that clinician in there. We've applied for ARPA money for that. We're also looking at partnering with Lancaster to split the cost of that person and split the time. And again, it's just a matter of time of working with advocates, working with CHL. They have the same hiring issues we have. It's hard to find people. Once we get this program established, we can start applying for grants through DMH. And they're really willing to give a lot of grants for this. They see the need. It's a rolling grant process, so once we get this moving, we can start going in that direction.
Is there a community option for this as well? I mean, I don't want to at all downplay the mental health aspect of it, but comparing the mental health calls to the actual officer calls, they're vastly different, which doesn't mean that they're not important at all, but would it justify the hiring of even a part-time social worker, or is there the option for, are there companies that we could sort of outsource to?
You could. There's programs out there called COIN that works in the Middlesex district out in that county. But they're basically follow-ups. They do a lot of follow-up work. Advocates is probably one of the biggest social work organizations out there that embed clinicians with police officers. But they also do outreach work and they also do follow-up work. Okay. And I think that's more the line what you're looking for is that what we're looking for is to those crisis calls. Right. When somebody's in crisis, we need to be there and we need to have somebody that's a professional that knows a little more than we do. Okay.
Would they be covered under the police collective bargaining unit or a different?
No. Be a per diem contract employee.
Okay.
Chief,
Yes.
the way I'm doing the math here, the personnel line from 23 to 24 is up about 10%. And you mentioned the collective bargaining agreement a couple times. Could you describe that a little bit more and what the built-in increases are there? So I'm just trying to get a sense of what's driving the 10% increase.
Correct. It's a CBA. It's a collective bargaining agreement. They agreed to 2.5% increase plus a market adjustment. So that market adjustment is added into the salary lines to that point, and it's all covered by the CBA. This is all straight numbers from the union contract. No.
So it's 2.5% baseline and then plus a
1.7?
Yeah, it was like 1.7 and then the sergeants got an increase on top of that. So their contract, they got a 2.5%, I believe, July 1 of 2022. Then they got a 2.5% this year, plus they've got a market adjustment on top of that. That's why you're seeing that big of an increase. Plus the addition, you got to add that officer that we added this year in January. We have to account for that full year salary also.
That salary this year is a half-year salary, so the salary next year is a full-year salary. That person was hired in January.
So that 10%, you're looking at a 10% increase, and part of that is because we add an officer to that
Yep.
rotation.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying
Makes
to
sense.
figure out, what's what, okay,
A lot of numbers, trust me.
thank you.
Thank God she knows formulas. Any other questions on those lines? Okay, personnel incentives, this is again covered by the CBA. These are incentives for the officers, right down the line. When you see the highlighted yellow, these are adjustments for the pause in the hiring plan. So the other decrease is for the SRO stipend. We haven't identified an officer to fill that second position. That was supposed to happen this year, but with attrition, now we're just back to patrol. We put them back into patrol until we can fill that position. Once we do so, we'll try to identify somebody and put them in that position, but we're governed by state law also. The person that goes into an SRO has to be trained, has to be certified. We can't force anybody. It has to be an agreement between the school committee and us and the superintendent. It is a long process to get that filled, and there's a lot that goes with it. Everything else is stipend by contract by CBAs. Next slide, please.
So one question, maybe, I don't know if it's there or upcoming, a couple years ago, we were talking police reform, and we were talking all the education and training, and is that largely now kind of behind us and baked into this? Do we see other things coming down the road?
I see other things coming down the road. That's why I've asked for an increase in training, because there are mandates that go with that as part of in-service training, and we have it on the next slide over. But it's a part of in-service training, the mandated hours that we have to do, plus professional development. And now we're looking at a 16-hour minimum of firearms training, and that doesn't include qualifications. 16 hours of training is training. That's it. Every 6 months, we have to provide 8 hours of training, and that's mandated by the state. I don't disagree with that, and I'll explain that in our training slides.
Okay.
Peter Beardmore asked me last year, he goes, if I can increase that, I jumped all over it, and if he offered, I accepted. So that's, to me, training is huge, and it's an important part of our job. So the next slide, please, is the overtime. All right. So there's a significant difference here when you see overtime and everything under that. Overtime is our obligation to backfill shifts. So this is based on officers' benefit time. Again, with the pause on the hiring plan, we were able to lower that overtime a little bit. With the addition to our specialty positions, we don't backfill that on overtime. If they take time off, they take time off, we don't fill that position. That's why we're able to reduce that line down to $175,000. Not to say that it's not going to increase when next year comes around, we start asking for more personnel. So that is strictly for benefit time. Community policing, we asked for an increase in that. We're starting to participate again in community events. We're providing RAD again, RAD Kids. We have a plan in place to provide a Citizens Police Academy again in the fall. We are meeting right now as a staff to provide some type of junior police academy in the summer. So these are all community initiatives that we want to see to come to fruition, and it's a great benefit to the community. I was going to make a shameless plug, but I'll allow Amanda to do it since she's our RAD coordinator, and she could fill you all in about RAD.
Sure. RAD is a self-defense class for women, and we are offering a class starting the first week of May for community members, for women. That date will be posted. Hopefully in the next couple weeks, you'll see the sign-ups online. And then hopefully this summer we'll be running another RAD Kids program. We just started today, actually, our RAD program with the high school students again. That has not been run since 2019 because of COVID, so we're really excited to get back into the high school. But again, another community-based RAD program will be starting the first week of May.
Have everybody sign up. Send the applications in once we put those dates up.
You said another one, is that the only one that's available?
So we try to run 2 adult rad programs outside of the school. So we run one in the school for the high school kids,
Yeah.
the seniors. And then we try to run 2 adult rad programs and 2 kids programs each year. That's been difficult with COVID, but hopefully we'll be back on track starting this year.
I was just thinking the timing of it and having, my girls in college, it
We're-
would be a way for
We
them.
had just talked about that.
So that is why we were hoping to run one starting this, because they're still away? Is that what you're saying? Or they're
Well, I
going to be
mean,
away?
Anyone who has kids in college, it'd be away come May 1st. I mean, it's
Well-
about the time they come home from college.
We were talking about running something in August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prior to kids, freshmen going off to college,
Yeah.
and kids that come back to go off to
Okay.
college. It's a great way for them to get acclimated to life outside of home, and make sure that they are safe and they understand how to be safe, so.
How long does each session run?
The adult program is 12 hours including simulation, so depending on how it gets broken up, it's usually a 4-week program with one additional week depending on time for simulation. So if we're looking at trying to run one, prior to kids going back to college, it would likely be end of July into August to fulfill the requirements of the program.
Any other questions? It's a great program.
It is a great
It's-
program, especially for those college-age students. It's a great program.
No, I would, not just for the college kids, but
Yep.
for your wives, for your sisters, for your moms. The class is really geared for anybody at any level, any age, and it's a really big benefit to the community. The more we can make people safe, the better they are. Questions on that? On any of the overtime or lines there? Training. Again, you had asked about what do we see coming down the road? Do we see any more mandates? Again, you just never know with reform and what they're looking to the future, but I don't disagree with it. I think the training is important. The training is important to police officers. We want to be considered professionals, and the way we do that is become better trained officers. We have mandated 40 hours of training for in-service, 16 hours of professional development that we have to provide officers, which is a good thing. Again, you're going to see a reduction in one of the lines for firearms training is just because that 10-year plan is on pause. When we we broke out one more line for less than lethal training because of what we have to do with that. Officers have to be trained on all our platforms that we have within the police department, and we have several less than lethal options, and we need to make sure they're trained on each platform that we have. Okay. Any questions on that?
What about just like general de-escalation and, I'll tell you, like, one of my favorite shows is OP Live. I think you should try to go on it. You might be the most boring one, but I'm not sure you can compete, and there's some police officers that you see on there, and their de-escalation techniques are fabulous. And, I've never had a bad experience in town, but is that something also
It
Is it
is
part of this?
absolutely, de-escalation's been taught in law enforcement since the beginning of time. Just a different word for it.
Yeah.
Verbalization, verbal judo, however you want to put it, officers are taught, there's always steps we take before we get to hands-on. And, because nobody wants to get hurt. I can guarantee you that. And the way to do that is to be able to verbalize with somebody, and speak with somebody. We incorporate that with our defensive tactics training every year. That is also incorporated with any type of use of force platform. And that goes right down the line. And I would venture to guess we don't want patrol live here. No. And honestly, our officers do a great job. I get a use of force report every year. We do an annual report, and we're pretty stable where we are. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think we only had 9 use of force incidents last year, which is really good, for the amount of arrests we're seeing too,
Okay.
which is really good.
Yep.
Are there any less than lethal options that we do not currently have in town that might be worth investigating? Not knowing any of them other than what's listed?
Yes and no. I mean, we have really good equipment right now, and obviously we always look to see what's out there and what's some of the options that we have. Right now, our platforms are pretty good, and they're well-trained. We have instructors in-house that take care of that, so that I'm fortunate to have those instructors, and they're really good at what they do.
Excellent. Okay.
So Chief, what percentage, over the course of a year, what percentage of time does an officer spend training? I mean, I guess this is formal training. I'm sure there's a lot of on-the-job, training as well, but
That's a tough question, because if you're looking at an average of 70 hours per officer, I think we average, your regular work schedule is 2,500 hours, I think, a year at 52 weeks. I would say it would be less than 10%, and that's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of the beast, too. I mean, we have, we still have a town to protect, too. We can't spend our entire time training. But I would say that the training that we do provide and that they do attend is top-notch. And, again, if you're offering more money to provide more training, I will make sure that percentage jumps up to 10% a month, and we can do it that way.
no, I mean, it's my own personal view that, that it's just inadequate. And I'm not saying it's inadequate, but I'm saying, like, I think, the training is such an important component, and I have a military background, so we trained all the time, and it just is so helpful. And so, I don't know, sign me up if the town manager wants to increase that training budget, but.
Thank you. I agree 100%. I really do, and I think if there's a way that we could get to a point where we do training once a month, right? Whether it's 4 hours or 8 hours for every officer. I mean, that's the ideal, pie in the sky situation. But again, we still have a town to protect. We still have, patrol functions and stuff that we have to do. And we try to get as much training as we can. And again, that's probably some of the issues we're facing around this country too, is the training aspect.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, equipment maintenance, next slide, did we? Change slides, sorry. Purchase of services, equipment maintenance, that's our equipment within the station. Right? Everything that we have within our station, the equipment that we use, that's our maintenance budget there that are here. A motorcycle lease, again, just renewing our lease for another year. That is actually, it's been a real plus for us too. It gets a lot of community policing, and by the time we got it, I think it was October, and he got a lot of use out of it already before we got it out.
I don't think I've seen it.
I mean, I think he did a homecoming parade.
Okay.
I don't know if it was our bike or if we borrowed a bike for that one. It was ours, yeah. So it's been a real good PR thing, and it's a real good thing for our traffic guy. Next slide, please. Supplies, that's just basic supplies for the police department. We are able to take the radar unit off of that list. We are good, and we are up to date with all of our equipment. Moving forward, probably a 5-year plan down the road, we would be looked to reincorporate the radar units because they become outdated and we start seeing technology change. We've asked for an increase in our firearm supplies. That is just because ammunition has gone through the roof. On the low end, I estimated about a 30% increase in 1 year. That's on the low end right now, and you just don't know the fluctuation of ammunition. With the amount of training that we have to do, we need to keep that supply up. Canine expenses include Hank. We put that in the budget last year, so Hank gets a part of that too. He gets part of that salary.
Are you having difficulty acquiring any ammunition at this point too, or is it just the cost?
Last year at the beginning, yes. Right now, it seems to be pretty decent. We have a good relationship with some of the equipment sellers around here that help us out pretty good.
Okay.
So we're doing pretty good. And on top of it, we've had recruits that we've sent to the academy that we have to provide so much ammunition. So that's where we come into difficulty of getting ammunition in.
Okay.
Is that radar unit like the little trailer? Is that what you're talking about?
What's that?
The radar unit line, is that?
It's just the one that we put in the cruiser.
Oh, okay.
The trailer is purchased, we own that outright.
Okay.
That was, I believe it was bought off a traffic grant like 4 or 5 years ago.
Do they have trailers that are actually like remind people that what a stop sign means? Because I don't think anyone in
You're
town.
doing it right now, and I applaud you for that. Yeah, but, I mean, DPW's done a great job of identifying some signs and putting up those flashing reds around the
Okay.
stop signs. Most of the signs that we see remind people to slow down. And we've got a couple of those out there right now that we've put up and obtained them through grant. But yeah, there's traffic calming devices that we can try to find. I wish everybody would stop for signs and, you know,
Some people don't even give it
that I,
it a shot.
100%
sometimes they go down to 2 miles an hour, but some people don't even slow down, I think.
Yeah, they think it's clear to go and they just go.
Or if you
Again,
stop, it counts for them.
You know,
I
part
didn't
of
think
it,
it
this
mattered
is,
to you if you stopped.
this is actually really good because this is part of educating people too, to understand, you know, the traffic. And again, you go back to what we've seen with traffic accidents and the injuries that we're seeing. We're seeing an increase in traffic accidents. You know, pay attention a little more, you know, and we try to get out there and enforce the traffic laws as much as we can. And again, you know, part of that enforcement is to educate people too. It's not always just to punish people.
Yeah.
You know, and it's tough because, you know, you start writing speeding fines, then not only are you paying the fines, but you're paying the insurance. So you're getting double whacked, and you're trying to educate people and try to keep them in, you know, education is the best way to go at the first. But that's a good public service announcement, it really
Yeah,
is.
that's brought to you by the FinCom.
Next line, please. Our other expenses, detail software, that is our actual scheduling platform. We're actually working with Heather and Suzer about, we're pretty close. When they upgrade Munis, we'll be able to upload our payroll right into it. It'll eliminate some of the steps that we have to go through now, make us more efficient. We look forward to that, and I'm sure Heather looks forward to that, so she doesn't get a book this big of payroll to sign, and we're moving towards that direction. Dues and membership increases, like everything else, just inflation, and we've added the lieutenant to our membership fees. Training course fees is relatively even, 23.6 is what we're looking at for pay for outside vendors or any type of training that we do that's not paid for by the state, or that's not provided by the municipal training committee. We have private vendors that we use, that, you know, we send officers different things, one of them being active shooter. We have a vendor that we use that we've certified 2 of our officers as active shooter instructors. So that's where those fees come from. Animal control, she's been in our budget for the past few years, and we're taking over that now, so we can, you know, we meet with her on a regular basis. She comes in, pops in, says hi, and we're starting to do her payroll and getting everything in within the budget line. This is where you're gonna see that $4,000 request for a vicious dog kennel. We have an area at the station where we actually have a man door that goes into our Sally Port, where we can put a kennel that's right next to that door, and we can safely get animals in there. We already have pole snares, and we've estimated the kennel about $4,000, hopefully to avoid any other situation like that again.
Is vicious dog defined by breed or by temperament, or like, how do you make?
By their actions. We don't, this was, and it's funny you say that, because one of the reporters tried to get me to say something about vicious dogs and breeds. It's not the breed. It's not even temperament, it's what their actions are at the time. And a lot of the time, it's how those dogs are raised. It's usually a human factor that gets them into that point. I know people that have pits that are the friendliest dogs around. I mean, and I know people that have little tiny dogs that'll bite you, you know, and nip at your ankles, and, you know, so I think it's, she knows who I'm talking, one of her dogs, you know. It's, and again, it's, to me, it's the action of the dog. It's
Would you
not
have
the breed.
identified that incident prior to it happening, do you think?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The incident that we all know about,
Yep.
would that, do you think you would have identified that as a vicious dog prior to
Absolutely.
it happening?
I think so, just because of the way the dog was found, and we actually were looking for that dog, and it kept taking off. One of the comments that we were talking about this the other day, and one of the things that was said is the dog was actually tired, and that was probably the reason why we got it into the cruiser that night. But yeah, I think so. That type of dog, when it was just roaming around and it was looking for different things, I think those are the precautions that we would take and say, you know, it could have been, you know, a poodle or whatever, but just those circumstances we would put him in that kennel.
Okay.
And then say, Kathy, come get him when you're ready. And we can decide at that point. Any other questions? Okay, next slide. So this is one of the areas we were able to reduce our request. We've seen a significant surplus every year in this. One of the biggest reasons in the last 2 years is the Worcester County Sheriff's Office with the safekeep. It's been a huge plus for us. We were able to reduce that cost at 25.6, and that's a huge reduction. And honestly, to take the detainees and move them down to Worcester and let them take care of them, they're the professionals at it. They know how to handle this better than we do. Takes a lot of liability off us when they're in our cells and what we have to do to watch them. So it's been a godsend at this point. It's been really good. They work really well with us.
How does that line actually get distributed? Is it,
The top line is salaries. That's because we have to pay somebody to watch a detainee.
at Worcester County Sheriff's Office?
Nope, that's just for our
our
stations.
officers.
Yep.
Okay.
That's when we have to house somebody within our own lockup.
Okay, so that's separate from salary, separate from overtime?
Correct.
That is just, okay,
We broke that right out
Okay.
and put it in a lockup.
perfect, okay, thank you.
All right, next slide. So Radio Watch, we reclassified our front desk personnel. It was a reserve officer. Now it's in the clerical union, a clerical position. We hired somebody just recently, within the last month. She's been awesome. We were able to reduce that rate because she's starting at a lower step than the person that left. The next line where it says salaries OT, that line is for covering the desk from 3 to 7. That line goes to our reserve officers first, and then it's put out to bid for first right of refusal. We try to cover the desk 3 to 7. That's one of those positions too that if it doesn't get filled, it doesn't get filled. There's no forcing. We fill from 7 to 3 mandatory Monday through Friday. 3 to 7, we've been able to, for the past month, been able to get people to work that. It's important that we have somebody there and somebody's at that desk when somebody walks through that door.
That's AM, correct?
7 a.m. to 7 p.m., correct.
But the 3 to 7 shift?
3 p.m. to 7 p.m.
3 p.m., okay.
Yep, this is ours. Regional dispatch, that is our dispatch center, our public safety access point, that handles 6 communities right now. That is actually not just in our budget, that is split between the police and fire. That money is allocated based on the finance committee and the Neshoba Valley Admin Board. They decide what the salary is going to be in conjunction with our executive director from Neshoba, and that's the salary. And that's our portion for the town of Lunenburg to pay for that.
Did I remember that, was it this one that one town was thinking of pulling out of?
They did. Townsend pulled out, but 911 made us whole and continue to pay that. So we're still in the process of trying to find somebody to fill that void, but 911 has been making us whole and they continue to do so.
When you say 911, what do you mean by that?
I'm sorry?
When you say that 911?
911, the state agency.
Okay.
There's a state agency that funds PSAPs, which is a public safety access point. Grants available, especially when you're a REC, a regional emergency center. They provide funding, grant funding, similar to state aid for municipalities.
So could that be a potential future hit on us if we don't get another?
No, because they've guaranteed to fund that, even that loss. They've continued to fund it. This is the second year they've funded it.
Okay.
Whether that increases or decreases, that's an unknown at this point, but we're still working to get another town to jump in with the rec center, and that would kind of level that off
Is this a per call cost?
per town,
Okay,
split evenly.
okay, so I guess my question is, we have 2 different numbers. Is the number that they gave you 220,000, or how do we get to a number?
That was the original, breakdown of their budget, and our portion of the town. I believe the executive director met with the finance committee of all the towns. One person's appointed from each town, and that 212 is what they decided on for their budget.
Okay, okay.
So
it's not up to the town manager to say,
No.
we don't want to pay that much, we're going to pay this much.
She could say no.
Okay, got it.
Who's our rep on that?
myself and
Oh,
Well,
town manager.
yes, no longer the chair of that committee, but the chief is the chair of
Okay.
the office committee. And there's also a finance committee.
Okay.
Finance subcommittee.
Can you get us a
and that's
discount?
you?
No,
Oh, Karen.
just more work.
Community
Yeah.
has a representative
Okay.
on each of those boards.
Any other questions in that section? Vehicle maintenance, $67,000. All right. Purchase of services, that's the service of vehicles outside the realm of our mechanic. If we have issues with our cruisers, maybe the boat or UTV, we can send it out to have a work service. Supplies are anything from brakes, tires, any parts that we need for those cruisers would come out of that. Fuel costs is what allotted to our department specifically, at $40,000 a year. I will say this, and I said this during the capital planning meeting, is that those hybrids have saved us. We're $4 over quarter one and quarter two, which we hope is going to level off anyways because the prices have come down. If we didn't have those hybrids, I think we'd be in a little bit of trouble in our fuel line, especially with the fuel costs. Last summer at the beginning of quarter one, it was just astronomical. We have 6 hybrids online right now on the line cars, and it's tremendous, and it saved us a ton of money. Questions on it? Yeah.
Just, I know this gets kind of murky with the DPW helping out as well with the maintenance portion. Is that how, does the DPW kick in anything from their line items to also fund anything for the police vehicles at all?
Maybe the oil, they may, something like that, but typically if they need a part for our cruiser, they'll give us the bill and we'll pay it out of one of these
Okay.
lines.
Just the labor would be
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
salaries, not our salaries.
But they're all salaried anyways.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
okay.
And I will say this, that mechanic, Jim,
Mm-hmm.
he is one of the best. And he does a great job with our cruisers. And if there's something wrong, he knows how to fix it. And if he can't, he knows who to call. We gotta keep him. Can't let him go anywhere. Anything else on that? Okay. So I was talked into that second picture. That is Brad's high school picture from the high school. So now that he's ingrained in there, he gets his own yearbook picture. And the shadow was somebody's idea. But this is just an update on our funding from last year. The motorcycle is on the road. Our part-time admin assistant, we're still trying to fill. As with anything else, we're having trouble hiring and finding people to apply. And ours is a little different. Ours is a little more difficult. We put people through a different vetting process because of the information that we have at the station. So that vetting process has to be pretty detailed. But we have some more resumes coming in. Hopefully, we can get somebody hired in that position. Hank expenses are in the budget, and yes, that is a shadow picture of Brad and Hank. Next slide, please. This is our capital plan update from last year. The F-150 has been shipped. We just don't have a timeline when it's going to be in. The Mark Cruiser is in production. That went into production about a week after the F-150, so I'm thinking within the next couple of weeks we'll know if it's being shipped or not. Officer Jack Wagner has been identified as our new canine officer. That is not his puppy yet. We just wanted to demonstrate that he will have a puppy soon. We are researching breeds right now. And one of the things that was explained to me, because I'm obviously not a canine handler, is as the training date gets closer is when we'll purchase the puppy. Everything else, we'll get it ready to go now. One of the reasons for that is because they don't want the dog to have any bad habits before they get to the training portion of that. So, looking far and wide, and we'll be able to get a breed here shortly.
What's the plan if that doesn't get it? That was the FY23 capital plan
Correct.
purchase, that's right.
Correct. So we're pretty much in line where we want to be right now to get that going.
How long is the training before they come into?
Anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fast.
But it's every week. There's no break. It goes, you start, you finish. That's it. But we're
After
also.
12 weeks, a puppy is ready to enter into,
Absolutely.
it's quite a training.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty intense. And it was longer when we had a patrol function dog, but we have decided to do search dog, friendly search, narcotics, stuff like that. So the patrol function of the dog has been removed, so that lessens the time of training. And the training doesn't stop after they leave, like the academy of the training. It's continuous. They're training all the time.
And that training was actually part of the capital purchase as
Correct.
well, right? It was the purchase of the dog and the training in it. This marked cruiser, that would add a 7th to the fleet then? Or are we still, we're still
Recycle down.
recycling
Yeah,
out the oldest one?
We recycle down. We're about to put one on municipal bid. If anybody's interested, it'll be on tomorrow, so it's a old gas cruiser, if you want. It'll be put on tomorrow, but as we get those cars in, we'll cycle the other ones out.
Okay.
So we try to limit our spares to 3 or 4.
Right.
And we should be good.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, next slide. Our FY ’24 capital plan, we put it on hold. We backed off for a year. We evaluated our needs. I think we're good right now. We will reevaluate this summer and see where we're at and reallocate and start moving forward with that. The one thing I will say is Casey still there? Yes. I told her she had to wait. We are working with Suzer to develop a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan for our building. We've run into some issues that we've identified, and we need to start allocating some resources to rectify those issues. Right now, we had met yesterday, and we talked about developing a 5-year plan. Technically, God knows you all know that technology changes so quickly, we need to keep up with it. And, so we're in those planning purposes, and on FY '25, we'll be looking to start moving in that direction.
Are there any restrictions for sort of a cloud-based police operation?
Nope.
Okay.
It's just the amount that you're gonna spend because of what we're required to do.
Okay.
Storage could be astronomical.
Right.
At that point. But again, it's, we can examine it. That's one of the reasons why we didn't go with cloud storage with the body-worn cameras. It would just push our budget right through the roof, because the amount of information that we're bringing in and putting in there would be astronomical. Anything else? All right, our goals, again, is our 10-year plan is our first goal and our priority. Even though it's been put on pause, again, we look forward to moving back to that plan in 2025 and move forward with that. As we get to that point, we can start filling our specialty positions again, back to our second detective, get a second lieutenant in, our second traffic officer, that SRO, we're looking to put an SRO in every building if we can, get to that point, and then a detective sergeant to oversee those bureaus.
So you're pausing this 1 year, does that mean one of these years you're gonna look to take on
Nope.
double the amount? Or
we'll
it just
push it
becomes an
back.
11-year plan?
Yep, we'll just, 11-year plan,
Okay.
or pause, yeah,
10-year plan with an asterisk.
yeah, there you go. The next one is that co-response. This is important, and again, I can't stress this enough, is to keep moving towards this and try to get this embedded with us. Next slide. Our goal 3 is to maintain our training, and if we can increase, and keep moving to that, into, like we said, training all the time and making sure our officers are the best trained that we can possibly be. Goal 4 is, I've been looking at this since I became chief, is to implement some type of evaluation process for our members of our department. Again, it's kind of taken a back burner because everything, once you start something, everything else comes forward. But it is a great way to evaluate our officers. We can identify some training issues that we see, any deficient areas that we can get training to these officers. It's a good way to gauge if they're ready for promotions or they're ready to advance in their careers at that point. This too is something we would work hand in hand with the union in collaboration with them. Next slide is our last goal. MPACT, we are currently certified. We are considered a best practice organization within the state. We received the first portion of accreditation. I just got some good news from my accreditation manager today. We are moving forward. Mid-June, we will be evaluated for full accreditation. So all our policies in line with the standards that have been set by the state. Our practices within our organization is considered in line with the standards of the state. So it'll be nice to get this goal accomplished, but with accomplishing this, we have to maintain all those standards moving forward. So that's part of our goal, is to continue that path.
Apart from the accolades that accompany that, is there anything else beyond that that sort of comes with accreditation?
Oh, absolutely. Reduces liability for the town. When you start looking at if you, God forbid, we ever face some type of liability lawsuit, they're gonna come back and look at our policies. When you have an accreditation through a state agency like this that said the standards are set, they've met these, it lessens that liability, so it's a huge benefit to that.
Okay.
And we get recognized as the best practice organization, which is a huge thing. You know, there's very few, I don't want to say very few, but there's not a lot of departments that are at that point yet.
I believe there are some grants that you need to be accredited for to
Yes.
apply as well.
Yeah, our use of force policy has to be certified through MPAC for us to acquire any further grants. So there's some positives with that.
Do you happen to know about how many of the communities are fully accredited?
Not off the top.
I mean, is it like 10%, 20%?
I'd say 20.
Maybe 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And then I would probably add another 20 to 25% certification process. So it's a two-step process. You got to get certified first and then full accreditation.
okay.
All of the participating communities, the ones that are in self-assessment, which is the previous stage that we were in, certification and accreditation are all listed on their website if you wanted to see which communities are included.
And with the creation of POST, it's going to give us a leg up on POST too, because eventually POST is going to mandate that every department's going to have to get accredited. All their policies are going to have to follow that standard, which again, I don't disagree with.
Post is,
The State Commission, Police Reform,
oh, the
the
police,
commission,
okay, okay.
Peace Officers Standard and Training in our state. And that's it. You know, I want to thank you. I thank the community for their continued support. I thank you folks too for your continued support right along. And I also, you know, my department members, I'm nothing without them. Without their support and their collaboration, we have a great team there. We work well together, and we're going to continue to provide the best police services we can. Questions?
Start down here. Any questions down here?
I think
No,
we
I
answered, yeah.
just want to comment, this is a great presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's really comprehensive, and I like numbers, so you show the numbers. So, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you. A lot of credit goes to Amanda. She likes numbers too, obviously. Yeah. Any other questions? Awesome.
I don't have anything. No, I asked.
No,
them
I mean,
during
we
the
asked them all
presentation.
through the
Exactly.
presentations.
Jay, do you have anything to?
The only question I had regarding accidents, are there places in town that are like hotspot tracking, where, you know, like road design would help reduce accidents?
Without looking at the exact location of those accidents, there are some areas in town that we're concerned with. One being Walmart intersection, going westbound. We've been trying to work with Mass DOT to get that changed to a right turn only lane. That's been a long process. One of the studies is completed. We're waiting for another study to be completed. Mass Ave, you know, that continues to be a high-speed area that we see accidents. And honestly, no town, I think, no road in town has not had an accident on it in the last couple of years. And, you know, most of the roads, and I will, you know, it's usually contributed to driver error, because most of the roads in our town are phenomenal. I live over the line, and
You know,
I will reserve that comment, but yes.
you know when you leave Lunenburg,
Yep, absolutely. Right away.
although it's easier to speed with roads, right?
No, it's not. That's not a public service announcement.
But you shouldn't.
But Jay, if you send me an email, I can get those stats fairly quickly.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, are there any, aside from the Walmart intersection, are there any other planned, I guess, work with the DPW to identify solutions for any of it, if there are other hotspots in town, say, I don't know,
When we
Leominster Lancaster intersection or something?
Yeah, when we start identifying, we work with Bill and try to, and he's great to work with, whatever we need. And he's got a great connection with Mass DOT, being a former employee with DOT. So he's really pushing for our intersection down there. And that's one of the biggest, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have right now that we need to rectify. Going home that way every night, it is brutal. People fly in that right-hand lane and try to cut people off. Unfortunately, it doesn't say right turn only, and that's when we're running into issues with that.
And because it's a state road, we can't just paint an arrow
Correct.
by a sign.
Yeah, I think we might be in a little trouble. There is a sign further up the street that says right turn only. We don't know who put that sign in. Quite honestly, I've been here 23 years and nobody knows who put that sign in. Nobody admits to it. The DOT says they didn't do it. Highway says they didn't do it, so, I don't know, somebody put it up in the middle of the night.
So if somebody puts an arrow out there in the middle of the night, so be it.
If it appears, it appears.
Not that I'm advocating that.
You know we are on television.
Of course.
Somebody's gonna be at Abishan tomorrow buying
I have a question for you, I guess, that just popped in my head. So the Pondview Commons traffic study, did you review that study? Because I heard that study, and some of the inputs into it, like what's the max speed that people travel down that road? I guarantee you it's not what they used to have. Well, I don't guarantee it, but have we thought about putting up, collection to see what it actually is?
We did, we actually did. We had our traffic trailer down there. It's not a lot different. We don't have a ton of traffic there right now, but that's not gonna say that's not gonna change.
Yeah.
When you put 2 apartment buildings down there, with the amount of cars that you're putting down there. And that was one of my concerns, when I wrote the letter, was you're increasing, traffic flow in rural road that's not very wide. So something's gonna have to, give down there. They're gonna have to do something with the infrastructure when they start that project or whenever that project gets off.
Okay.
The developer spent a lot of money on a traffic study on there, and I would guess that he's probably gonna do it again.
Yeah, because I just even looked at, like, the intersections he was worried about, and it was like Northfield and Chase wasn't on that, and I'm like, it's already, like, the hardest road to cross.
Which, I guess we could request them to further their study out, because that's exactly what the DOT does. When you ask them to change a road or do something with the road, they don't just study that intersection like Walmart. How does it affect the next intersection? How does it affect going up? And that's one of the things that we were told about Walmart intersection was, well, now we gotta make sure it doesn't affect Chase Road and Mass Ave. Because it's a free travel lane coming off of Chase Road onto Mass Ave. So my suggestion would be is that we ask the developer to do another traffic study and include Chase Road and West Townsend coming off. And that is absolutely an intersection that if you increase traffic, it's gonna be an issue. Speed limits on Chase Road are 45 miles an hour. Now you're bringing residential traffic off of West Townsend onto that. It could be a situation where we don't want to deal with it. Either that or we tell the developer that, oh, now you got to start thinking about putting in lights or some type of caution down there. You're going to have to mitigate these circumstances that we're going to run into. And that's something I think we should move forward with.
Okay.
Speaking of speed limits, every now and then it'll come up on social media as to what the actual speed limits are in town. And just so it's out there, so we can point to the time and exact day. If it's not posted in town, what is the speed limit for?
Rural is 40, and thickly settled is 30.
Okay.
Okay, if it's, most roads are posted in town.
Right.
And, they should be fine.
Perfect, thank you.
PSAs.
The other question I had was, do we have any granularity on going way back to the beginning with accidents, arrests, calls, or anything like that for in-town versus out-of-town
Oh, absolutely. I could break it all the way down to out of state, in town.
And just out of curiosity, are we seeing sort of we may be level on a trend or, no increase or decrease on the trend of calls or something, but are we seeing more in-town calls versus last year's in-town calls or something like that?
I would definitely have to break down those numbers and say, okay, where are we at? Because we do have a shopping center that attracts a lot of different type of elements. We have Route 2A and 13 that come through town that you see a lot of transient traffic, whether it's going to Nashville, Lowell, going to Fitchburg, coming from Fitchburg and Leominster. So you're seeing a significant amount of traffic that comes through that involves what we stop or rest or that may come out of that. So I'd have to definitely pull out that information, but we do track that.
Okay. I'm just curious if we've seen anything that's I'm sure you've kind of looked at that. Is there anything that is there a check that kind of pops up that says, oh, hey, we've increased 80%?
Not out of the ordinary, because again, we border 2 medium-sized cities. And we're gonna get the effects of what they're dealing with, one way or the other. Right? And, we have a shopping center in town that people frequent.
Okay.
So that's gonna deal with that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, do we have a town manager report? Good night, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. 2 great presentations tonight.
Yes.
Good information. So I'll start with information that I gave in my town manager report this week. Mainly, we had 2 invitation for bids out, one for 30 School Street. We received 5 bids. The low bid was from Costello Dismantling Company out of Wareham, and that was for $216,649. High bid was $398,845, so a little spread there. Costello was the lowest, most responsive bidder, so they'll be awarded the bid. We're working on those contract documents right now.
That's for
so
the
that project
asbestos
should start soon.
That's the asbestos
Asbestos
abatement?
and demolition.
The full demolition as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
for 30 School Street.
So is there now then a timeline for when that should be
So
complete?
once all the contract documents are signed, it's 75 days they have to perform the work.
Okay, so that's like this summer maybe?
No, they should be done before then.
Mid-spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 2.5 months.
Would there be impact potentially like farmer's market or anything in that area with that while that's
So
going on?
Farmers Market is on the Ritter lawn.
Yeah,
They
but it's
use
close.
some parking over in that direction, but it'll all be fenced off, that area that the work zone be.
I assume that the contract would also be just working hours, not 3 o'clock in the
Yes,
morning
yeah.
demolition. I figured it would be in there, just making sure.
And the Town Hall Building Envelope Project, which was one of the capital projects, those bids were due February 23rd. We only received 1 bid for that project, and that was for $258,800, plus the alternate work for the replacement of 2 chimneys was $43,000. So we are well beyond the $75,000 we had appropriated for that. So the facilities director will be reviewing that, and will review alternatives and what to do with that project. But I assume because the 1 bid really detracted from any competition for that project.
Is that an indication that we potentially appropriated too low, or how did we assess the appropriation for that?
The appropriation was based on our
Vertex.
architects' No,
Not the
so
Vertex.
Vertex originally, those numbers, but then our architect who designed the specifications and everything, those numbers were provided by him.
Okay. Is there reason to be concerned with that massive of a difference in estimates versus actual?
So that's what we're gonna look at.
Okay.
And we may have to do the project in phases. I think that number is extremely excessive for the work to be done.
Okay.
It was the roof, the 2 chimneys, a couple basement windows, and sealant around areas, so.
Wow. Okay.
Was there more people that pulled the
Yes.
RFI and just didn't respond?
Right. Yep, so we were gonna reach out to them why they didn't submit bids.
Okay. So you could put it back out to bid?
We could,
Okay.
yep. So we'll, looking at feedback, that's why it's important to get why they didn't bid. Could it be they have a full schedule already and they couldn't take on the work, or, prevailing wage is sometimes a detractor. So I also sent the committee updates for the budget. And if you want to start with the adjustments worksheet, it can review what changes have been made since February 16th. The governor released her budget on the 24th. So we have those revised cherry sheet local aid numbers. That was an additional $40,659 on the revenue side, a decrease in our assessments in cherry sheet offsets and choice and charter assessments of $194,537 on the expenditure side. On the revenue side, also, the select board took action to commit $986,000 towards 3 of the capital items for the ambulance and the 2 large DPW dump trucks. So that changes the revenue side by $986,000, removing the funding source from the special purpose stabilization. So the funding source would now be ARPA for those 3 items.
Do we have an idea as to how long it's going to take before that can actually be used and the trucks can actually be purchased?
The funding's available now. We have
Okay.
those.
So it's just
we have
however
those
long it
funds.
takes
It's
to
just-
actually
yep.
order it.
And they've been notified to proceed with ordering.
That's excellent. Okay.
Also on the expenditure side, the change in health insurance from the 8.5% to the 6.2% was a decrease of $39,214.47. The school was notified as well of that decrease in our rate renewal, so they will be voting on a revised budget shortly as well, or presented to the school committee. So that is forthcoming for their number, but I believe they're waiting on one contract, I believe, that would change their budget, but they're going to be around the 2.5%, slightly above the 2.5% increase. Patrolman salaries, the chief highlighted one of the figures for the patrolman salaries was a difference of $2,971.19. So that correction's been made in the budget to reflect that number. The change in capital plan figure is also reflected on the expenditure side, removing the $986,000 on the expenditure side. And I was contacted by the business manager from Monty Tech today. I had reached out and asked if there was any update, because they wait for the governor's numbers as well for Chapter 70. And they are presenting the budget tonight to the school committee. Won't be voted on for a couple more weeks. But that increase based on what is being presented tonight, this is just so a draft number, is a $100,654.60 increase to what we had in the budget. So we had 2.5% in for the assessment for Monty Tech. It's close to a 12% increase overall. And
Is that driven by the number of students or just our
it's enrollment.
fair share assessment?
Right, it's enrollment, and it is, make sure I get this right. So it's our required, our required local minimum set by the state, and that makes up 11.3% of the total increase. So our enrollment went from 93 to 97 students. So Tammy is excellent at explaining this, so when Monty comes in, the whole formula, it's very complicated, but,
What happens if we say, no, we're not increasing 12%, we're only doing 2.5%?
it would have to be, so the agreement with Monty Tech, they need certain percentage of the communities, member communities, to vote affirmatively for the budget. So we'd have to look at what that percentage would be. So certain communities have a greater voting power on that.
So even if the town voted no, in theory, we could be
Right.
forced into
It's
doing it
basically
anyways?
a majority vote of passing, like any regional school district. It's similar to that.
Okay.
Right, but the towns with the lowest percentage have the highest enrollment, and I think the highest number of voters too, right? Is the number of voters one per town, or
No,
is all
I
proportional?
think it's weighted. I'd have to, let me check the agreement. It's been a while since I looked at it.
In the past, has the preliminary assessment been the final one, or do they talk about it?
Sometimes it's gone down, actually. There's been years it's been, a secondary vote, it's been taken place after town meeting, and it's decreased. Not last year and this year.
Okay.
Karen's on camera now. I don't know if she wants to add anything.
Top of her head saying something.
She is.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Okay.
Right. And that was all the changes.
Can I, one question,
right.
so on the cherry sheet, the choice charter assessments, is that just an overall, nothing changed in our calculation, it's just the less money statewide is going to that? Is that what's going on?
No, so usually choice and charter assessments are based on number of students attending charter and taking advantage of school choice. So those figures are associated with what we report to the state. And Karen has more involvement in knowing those figures because she sees those reports. Karen, can you confirm that?
But those numbers that decrease in the assessments is based on enrollment of students that go out of the district to schools under school choice and charter schools. So originally, the estimate that was used was based on what was happening in FY '23, and there must be more up-to-date numbers because those enrollment figures are updated times throughout the year. So that is why we're seeing a decrease on those governance budget, because she would be taking into account those things.
So does that mean Lunenburg is sending less students to charter schools?
That would be my assumption based on those figures.
Okay.
We can look at the enrollment from 3 to 24 and get that information.
Yeah,
Based
just
on weighted numbers from 24.
I mean, it's just a pretty big percentage decrease. Just wondered why that happened. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
That's it. I'll have further updates to the budget next week. I've done a estimate for the overlay account. Essentially, 1.5 million will be what I'll be recommending to reserve and appropriate at the annual town meeting.
That's the worst-case scenario,
Yes.
effectively? Okay. That's that number I was looking
Yeah.
for last time.
So that includes if all the abatement applications were approved and the associated interest going out 12 months and using less 200,000 from what we have in the overlay.
Okay.
So grand total.
When
So we'll have
you-
a revised recommendation for capital and any other articles that we typically use free cash for.
I was going to say, I found when you sent the spreadsheet, very helpful. So when you are ready, have the next round, would you mind sending the spreadsheet, the budget spreadsheet back around?
The one with the line item detail?
You sent it to us, I don't know, a few weeks ago.
Yes, so with a new
Excel-
column, you
The
mean?
Excel version, yeah. Okay, thank you.
So if you're thinking $1.5 million for the overlay, then that's about $1.3 million towards capital? Is that a fair?
No, no. So our,
I thought we had 2.8.
we have 2.8, but typically we use it towards capital, OPEB, stabilization, special purpose stabilization, any other monetary funding articles, prior year expense, if there's any.
Okay. So then.
And we typically reserve a portion of that to fall towards next year.
Okay, so what is the capital at now?
So
are you
I
thinking?
haven't determined a revised figure for capital yet. That's what I will have a recommendation by next week.
Okay, and then just to be clear, the 986 that came from ARPA, that's going to stay from ARPA, or are you looking potentially to?
The
recommit that out of capital?
986, so originally my recommendation included 986,000 from the special purpose stabilization towards capital. So that is rescinded.
Okay.
Because that 986,000 is kind of come out of ARPA funding, which we have available now for those three capital items.
Okay, so that's going to stay ARPA funded? There's no intention
Yes.
of moving it?
Yeah, we're not going to pay ourselves back from the special purpose stabilization
Okay.
to refund the ARPA, essentially.
Yep. It was committed to be taken out of ARPA for those three items.
How does that, I'd be curious to know how that affects our planning for future purpose or future purchases that we had kind of started that special purpose stabilization fund for, in that kind of 5-year, 10-year plan that we were looking at the big, our new, I don't know, I think the fire department is getting a new engine at some point out of that.
Yes, yep, that's going out a few years.
In theory, does that mean, since we've taken out effectively $1 million of that planned expense?
We haven't taken out $1 million out of
Well,
it.
we've saved ourselves nearly $1 million by using the ARPA funding for that, so that would,
500 of that was, okay, for the ambulance, you're saying, or, so that still doesn't change our forward plan.
okay.
Because we're still gonna have large capital expenses.
Okay, so in other words, we just won't have to potentially borrow as much,
Or put,
Or
appropriate as
deposit
much, or whatever it may be, okay.
But reminder, capital changes every year,
Right.
so needs fluctuate years, gets updated every year.
Okay. Okay.
And lastly, just an update on snow and ice. We've had, I know everyone thinks it's been a very minor year for snow. Last week alone, I think they had 4 events in the week, if not 5. And partially it's just long events with not a lot of snowfall, but they have to go out and put salt down because the road conditions and are out there for over a period of the day. So we are now at a deficit of $291,493. for snow and ice.
Another storm coming this weekend.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, not good news there.
No. How are we with, so we're still able to cover that with our typical plan though, correct? Like there's no concern for if this peaks up over $300,000 or $400,000 by the end of the winter, potentially?
I would reconvene shortly with the DPW director and the finance director to confirm that, but I think when we sat down last, we had sufficient funding within the budget.
Okay, unless we have some very long winter that kicks up or continuously. Okay. All right.
So I was starting to listen to the pavement management plan on the select board meeting, and then kicked me off on cable or whatever. I had already tried to Zoom twice, so I gave up on that too.
Very informative.
Can you make that, is that going to be part of his presentation to us, or is that material you can just send to us?
He is going to discuss, I think on at least a couple slides, pavement management, but the report actually was going to be put on the DPW webpage as well.
Okay. Okay.
Out of curiosity,
And trash and recycling was an update too, so.
that's right. The decrease in the health insurance, the renewal rate, I know that we had our windfall year 2 years ago.
We had
and
a
then
couple years, yeah.
We were
very good.
expecting this large jump. Did they give you sort of any indication as to why it wasn't as large as we were concerned it was going to be to kind of recover back where we were? Are we still worried that, FY25, we may have that larger jump potentially? And not that 6.2% isn't large, but.
I think you asked a similar question. I haven't had a chance to follow up with our health insurance rep.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Brochu, anything from you to add?
Sorry about that. I'm choking. Oh, my goodness. No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on to old business. Given that it is 9:10, I am not opposed to kind of going through these pretty quickly.
Okay.
Unless there's anything that anybody really wants to get into. Finance Committee report, we just, town manager put out the first draft of the warrant articles. So we can at least start looking through those and we can kind of reconvene next week, I'm sure. For capital plan, nothing really changes at this point. We'll get another update from town manager next week. The tax assessment and abatements, I'm happy to have a discussion about it if anybody's up for talking about it again or continuing the conversation. To my knowledge, there isn't anything new other than, are there any new, do we have a number that has been released from either the assessors or anyone that gives us kind of an amount of abated money at this point? Nothing? Okay. Have we received any other assessors that have offered to take the position to do the reassessments? Okay, so we have at least a few leads, better than we were last week. Okay. Okay, excellent. Any other conversation anybody would like to have?
No, I mean, I'm happy at least we have a preliminary planning number that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the worst case scenario number, and that it doesn't take all of our free cash, if need be. The state reps meeting. So I started putting together a document, and then I realized that with 10 minutes, it's going to be a very quick conversation. And so I'm wondering if it's almost better to just simply get into the single kind of Chris's point of the formula-driven question.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on this is the formula-driven, and then things like these MBTA communities and the 40B calculations, and I think the state should let us control our own destiny more so than they're currently allowing us to do, especially where we are so close on 40B to begin with. And I mean, I don't know where you'd put some densely populated area next to Fitchburg train station or something, but,
Well, at this point, we're not currently making our 40B requirement, if I'm not mistaken.
no, but we're pretty close. I mean, we're at like 9.5%, so,
But I believe 40B requires, is it just 10% or is it 11?
10, right?
10?
For the census, we were like, 48 years.
But after the
After
census, it shifted, right?
Well, I don't think we'll ever get the census numbers, will we? We don't have the census numbers yet, do we? Yeah? I thought Adam said we hadn't had them yet, and we're using mass numbers.
What happens if we remain out of 40B, you know, below, substantially below 10%? If we're, say, down in the 7 to 8% range, do we have any repercussions with that?
It just makes any application eligible for be submitted to the state.
Okay. So, Chapter 70, calculations, 40B.
Yeah, and again, I know when Representative Scarsdale was out in front of town meeting, I think, you know, we talked, and she had mentioned that she is very opposed to that MBTA communities as well, and coming from, what is you, Townsend or Pepperell?
Pepperell, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably in the same boat. So I think those are the ones we need to kind of press on. And whether we get any traction on it, I don't know. I also like the thought that someone had on, you know, it's almost like there needs to be a rural communities caucus
Coalition.
formed so that they can band together and look out for the rest of the state that exists beyond Route 128.
I do wonder, though, if that's under their purview or if that's sort of more intertown.
Well, I don't know, they could champion the effort to establish a caucus and come in. I mean, I'd like to think our representatives represent the town, not Boston and all these, you know, worldwide issues that a lot of them are off trying to pursue. We got real issues here that they should be dealing with. And they're our representatives. And the same issues we have here are, you know, same in the Western Mass. I mean, it's crazy that you drive down the Mass Pike and you're paying tolls out in, you know, the first, I don't know, way out there, right, near Springfield and stuff, so that they can pay for the big dig or whatever, you know, it's, I guess the point is that there's a lot of rural communities facing the same issues, yet you get steamrolled by the, you know, the same old-time Beacon Hill people.
There's a lot more of them than there are of us, though.
Well, that's the coalition.
It is true that we get, there's the old cartoon where they have like, you know, they have like Beacon Hill, then there's like Fenway Park, then there's 128, then there's Worcester, Springfield, New York, and then California, and then the rest of the world. That's right. It's like, that's how they look at the world. We barely they barely notice us sometimes, but I think one of the things, there's going to be a lot of money coming in, or hopefully there will be, from the new tax on the 4% over people making over $1 million. That's supposed to go to schools and for
roads.
How do we get our fair share, or maybe $1 more of that?
I guarantee you that's not going to schools or roads in the end, because even I saw Maura Haley talk on that, and she's like, we'd like to make sure that it goes to where that they intended it to
I
go.
thought it was built into the actual law.
Yeah.
Okay, that
Not
they
that-
can
not that
change
that
on a whim.
means- Right.
Well, they take the money that was going to schools and say, well, now this is the money that goes to schools, like,
Well, they can change the law in a second.
Right,
They can
but
just go in and bang, the
money,
law's changed.
dollars are fungible, so you can take lottery.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give out of the general fund this money, because the lottery's paying for this, so,
Yeah.
you know, that's,
And we know how Chapter 70 treats our schools, so
Yeah.
I don't think
I'd
it's
like to
coming to our
see how they,
schools.
And because
I agree with you, though.
I think we have, at least our senator's got a little bit more sway than he did last year. I think, maybe pressuring or talking to him about what he wants to do for us. That would be, John Crone has been living in Lunenburg all his life, most of his life. Tell us what you see.
Yeah.
We're talking, but he can also tell us.
Well, he's a city resident now. He's in Fitchburg.
I know, he's in Fitchburg. Yeah, him and his mom moved to Fitchburg, good.
Okay.
He's a blue devil.
He is.
Blue knight, rather.
Any other discussion?
No, I mean, it's 8
10 minutes.
minutes, and I'm sure
it's not
schools
gonna
and
be like
select board are gonna have similar issues, and it would be good to hear from them, so
Okay.
it is what it is. We can always follow up afterwards and
Well, from
keep the dialogue going.
Mr. Jeffrey's email, he said that he welcomes conversation from committee members as well, after, I believe, at least sort of later in the conversation. But I don't think he's going to...
Should we be there, or are you going to just represent us?
You are more than welcome to be there.
Okay, but we
It's
don't
actually
have-
encouraged. Not required, but encouraged.
Wait, he's saying that committee members are not allowed to talk during the meeting?
No. He didn't, no. Just that the discussion is sort of funneled through the chairs. I've actually submitted today an agenda to have a joint meeting at Mr. Jeffrey's suggestion as well. So we can, I believe, open a joint meeting during the actual conversation as well, which would allow us to have a conversation. Since it's technically going to be 10 minutes with the finance committee, there's nothing stopping us from having a conversation with them as a finance committee.
I mean, honestly, 10 minutes is
I know.
nothing. Right? So it's like you can barely. So I think it probably needs to be pretty focused, right? And it's probably, I think probably, Evan, you just being sharp on what the points you want to make are, and 10 minutes doesn't leave a lot of time for anything.
So just to be clear, is this a joint meeting, or is this,
It's been posted as a joint meeting. I posted it this afternoon as a joint meeting.
and does everyone intend to, is everyone intending to go, I guess? Is that?
I'll go, which, sure.
I'm not sure I can make it. I'm 50-50, I would say. I have a work conflict that night, but I may blow it off.
Okay. I guess worst case, you just don't call us to order and we don't have a quorum. and
If we don't have
can-
a quorum, we don't have a quorum, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but.
But, again, Mr. Jeffries has made it very clear, he's not going to restrict conversation from,
Okay,
at least from comments and whatnot, and questions. But I agree. So I think what I'll do then is I'm going to reach out individually so we don't have any open meeting issues, just for kind of honing in on your exact questions to get it done as sort of
Sure.
concisely as possible.
Okay.
And then I will send them out tomorrow to the representatives themselves, so they have them ahead of time as well, just if they want to prepare anything for it.
Yeah, I mean, one other thought is just, you look in many parts of this state, and there's all sorts of economic, vitalization going on, but you come out here and like, all the stores are closing, what can be done to kind of bring that out here? It should be something else that I think that, a coalition of central Mass kind of folks should be interested in.
There's a lot of stuff going on in Fitchburg, downtown Fitchburg, the library, the old B.F. Brown, they just finished the City Hall. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I'm not sure so much about Leominster, but,
I mean, Sears has been empty for how long? Macy's has been empty for how long?
I think they put the Gardner furniture there. We drove by the other day, and
I think they put that where the Toys R Us was.
yeah, Toys R Us. Now that's going to be the launch, or what is it called?
Oh, is it?
It's going to be a bowling. I saw pictures of bowling alley and like trampoline things. It's like a function for
Oh.
we have parties for kids and things. Looks pretty nice, but that's where the Toys R Us used to be, and I think they moved the Gardner over to Macy's, or at least part of it. But yeah, that's, the whole mall thing is gonna be, that's a question for everybody. Every mall, what's gonna, I grew up in a town where there was a mall down the street, what's gonna happen to that?
Yep. Yeah, it's a nationwide issue.
Okay.
There's a lot of development going on in Devon.
Oh, yeah. They had to increase the amount of investments they were allowed to do, I think.
They raised the build-out cap. And there's a new, type of new warehouse being built, a huge one, coming on 371 Clemens Shirley Road, looks like.
Okay. Excellent. All right, moving on. Minutes from last meeting, February 23rd.
I was good with them, everyone.
Any issues at all? Okay.
Yeah.
I'd happily entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Perfect. Roll call vote. Mr. Simeoni.
Aye.
Mr. Nizzolo.
Aye.
Mr. Baelish.
Aye.
Mr. Gray.
Aye.
Mr. Menard.
Aye.
And I from myself. We are unanimous. Committee reports. In the last week, is there anything new to report? Free to just speak up for this one.
They were met on Tuesday. They had their public hearing to some changes to their rules and regulations that they held. And Bob LaFleur, their business manager, is retiring. I think March 15th might be their last day in the office. And they're having a little get-together for her, the Eagle House on Wednesday, the 15th at noon. So, and they just voted to appoint Paul Bertram as a new sewer business manager. And that turns opens up for a position as the assistant manager. They both post quickly. And the rest was just regular sewer business.
All right, thank you.
I did watch Planning Board, I don't know if someone else has that one, but they did interview 3 respondents to the master plan RFP. I know I personally have my own favorite of the 3. So it was interesting to hear the various ways that those groups would approach it, so.
All right. Future meetings. I think we're pretty well booked for that one unless anybody has anything that they'd like to put on there. All right. Any public comment from the committee? Hearing none. Any public comment from the public? Which I don't see any. Nope, seeing none. Can't even open the thing. There we go. All right. That brings us up to upcoming meetings. So we have our joint meeting with the state reps as school committee and select board on March 7th at 7 p.m. We have DPW and facilities on March 9th, fire and LPS, public schools on March 16th, administration unclassified debt service and Monty Tech on the 22nd, PAC sewer and other moneyed articles on the 23rd, and our first public hearing on the 30th. I've already put out for that public hearing, so that should be all taken care of, but we do need to decide if we want to put out a public hearing for the other 2 weeks following that meeting, ahead of the deadline for the warrant.
It all comes down to really which numbers aren't finalized and ready yet at that point.
At this point, I'm leaning towards at least putting out there for, what's the date? The 6th of April. I think we probably should at least hold that as a public hearing backup, just in case.
But
6th of April.
our other option is to simply just push it to the 13th of April. And that way we don't have to, it gives us an extra week of time to get final numbers in.
And it was April 4th when we need to have that report.
We keep looking every time, and I keep forgetting every time. Actually, I think I wrote it down.
Monday after 27th, is that the 4th?
It is. The Monday, the 3rd is the Monday after.
Yes, the 4th, it would be that.
Okay.
Okay, so that will be kind of public hearing. We'll also need to address and vote on that letter, I guess.
On the 30th,
Yeah, no later than the 30th.
right. So we have the 9th, the 16th, the 23rd, the 22nd, and the 30th. All to at least get that, to read through, to at least do a few read-throughs or whatnot, put it together and do some read-throughs and vote on it, at least by the public hearing date. Just remember, we have that Wednesday, Thursday meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have some time. Okay. So I will respond back to Elaine and suggest at least that we at least post it for a public hearing on April 13th, as well as March 30th, just in case we have any extra moneyed articles that we need, that we get finalized.
Okay.
That still puts us, Madam Town Manager, that still puts us before, if we have a public hearing on the 13th of April, we're still in line ahead of the warrant, we're still fine for the warrant at that, or for town meeting and warrant at that point, correct?
The warrant would already have
Yeah.
the printer by then, so it wouldn't be printed in what's mailed to all the households, but you could still vote and announce that vote at town meeting.
Right, okay.
But we could do that anyway in April, because town meeting's not till May.
Right, right. Okay. Okay. I'll talk it over with, yeah, I'll go through the dates and just see where we actually have a meeting that falls, so that way we don't have to call a specific meeting ahead of, out of line in April as well. Okay. Any other discussion on upcoming meetings for that purpose?
We want, just back on the previous one, we
Yep.
probably want to avoid school vacation week. Not that I have kids in school anymore, but
I do. So I think that's April 17th.
Yes.
Okay, so as long as we're not on the 20th, it should be fine. So it may have to be the 13th or the 27th. Okay. All right. With that, I'd happily take a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Jay?
Aye.
Caesar?
Aye.
Tom Baelish?
All right.
Tom Gray?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And an aye from myself. At 9:33, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, and good night, everybody.
Night, gentlemen.